Bev, I think you can start. Everybody's in.
Oh, everybody's in? Okay. All right. Okay, can you see me? Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Beverly Roxby. I'm part of the Belfast Climate Crisis Committee. We've been around for about 3 years. And for the last year and a half or so, we've been doing monthly public meetings for people to join and see all the various things there are to learn about what's happening on this planet and what people care about, and how people can do the kind of things that they need to do to help with sustainability efforts. So this meeting is all about students and climate. And it's an exciting time for students to be involved. There are a lot of students getting involved at the state level and of course at the national level. And they start within their schools. And so we have 3 young people who are going to be talking to us this evening about how they have gotten started doing what they are doing, and what they have done and what they're doing and what they hope to do. And they're really some movers and shaker people from a very early age in many cases. So I just want to run by a couple of things with you. We're going to have 3 speakers. Each person will be speaking for about 10 minutes, between 10 and maybe 15. And we'll do all 3 speakers in one after another. So save your questions, and in the chat, you can raise your hand when you have a question at the end, and just remember what your questions are, because you're going to have to save them until the end, and then we will call on you. Okay, so you'll be muted for now during the presentations, but then we can call on you at the end. So does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. All right, our first speaker is Ania Wright. And Ania graduated recently from the College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor. She is co-founder of the Maine Youth for Climate Justice, and she co-authored their climate justice syllabus. In Bar Harbor, she's worked with students and on the legislation that created Governor Mills' Climate Council, and then cleverly created a job for herself on that council when it became a reality. And she's now the youth member of Governor Mills' Climate Council. And in December, they announced their recommendations for promoting sustainability throughout the state. So she is making a big difference throughout the state. And I know for a fact that she works with climate action teams around the state and with students around the state. So she knows a lot about youth organizational efforts. And I guess it's time for you now, Ania.
Thank you so much, Bev. And thank you to everyone who's here tonight. It's such an honor to be speaking to all of you. I grew up in Falmouth and have taken many trips up to Bar Harbor, to College of the Atlantic, and now I live in Bar Harbor, but love passing through Belfast and make sure to stop at the co-op every single time. So yeah, really excited to be talking to all of you tonight. I really just want to share a bit about my journey as a youth activist in the climate sphere, and about what inspired me, and also what I see now in my work with other young people, what I see as really important. So a little bit more about me. As I said, I grew up in Falmouth, right outside of Portland. And I really was a pretty quiet kid. I'm not a very quiet person now, but growing up, I wasn't the smartest kid in school. I got good grades, but I was in no way the especially gifted student. I ran cross country and track, but I was never the fastest. I was just sort of an average student, and Falmouth is a very competitive school, and a lot of my friends went off to Ivy League educations, and I contemplated where to go, and ended up at College of the Atlantic, which is a place that I never thought that I would go to, but I ended up really loving it. And so all this to say is that some people are born outspoken, but I certainly wasn't. And it really wasn't until college and my time at College of the Atlantic that I started to find my confidence and my voice in the climate activism world. And so when I was at College of the Atlantic, I took classes on international climate policy, and climate science, and ended up applying to go with my school to Katowice, Poland, to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change conference. And going to this conference really changed my perspective on what it means to be an activist and to be heard. While I was at the conference in Poland, I had the absolute privilege of working with Greta Thunberg, who's the activist from Sweden. And my my example of how I got into the climate activism space is kind of the extreme. Not everybody gets to meet Greta, but really she taught me that even if you're a small person with a small voice, and she's really tiny, I'm 5'2" and she's like 5 inches shorter than I am. No matter how small you are, you have the opportunity to change the world and the ability to change the world. And really working with her and with other youth activists in Poland is really where I started to feel this, spark inside me, realizing that, oh, I can have an impact on these giant global issues. And when I reflect on this experience, it does feel very dreamlike and extreme. Like I said, not every student has the opportunity or resources to go to an international climate conference and work with world-known climate justice activists, let alone even have the privilege or resources to attend college or to learn about climate change in school. Thinking back to my public school education, I barely learned about climate change, and it was only through self-selecting in college that I really got to learn about it. So it got me thinking a lot about empowerment and what it takes to make people believe in themselves. And so after returning from Katowice, Poland, students at the high school in Bar Harbor and College of the Atlantic students became interested in getting involved in hosting their own climate strikes. And these strikes snowballed, as I'm sure Anna Siegel, who's speaking next, will talk a bit about as well. But they snowballed from just a handful of students in March 2018 to over 400 in our small village green in Bar Harbor in September 2019. And so these students were having an impact, and they were always trying to figure out what was next. They were seeing success and they wanted more of it. And so this soon led to a discussion about what Bar Harbor could do to stop climate change. And we may be a small town, but the students recognized the opportunity for change and that this was something that they had power in. They knew who the community leaders were. They knew how change happened at the local level. The international space was overwhelming. The national space was overwhelming. Even the state space was overwhelming, but they knew their town. So after many discussions, they decided to pursue a climate emergency declaration in town, something that I know they've actually come to speak to this committee about before. But really, here's what I found so special about this campaign, and also what made it so successful in Bar Harbor. And that is that it was entirely led by young people. When adults of the town found out about these plans, they had plenty of opportunities to co-opt it. The town councilor who ended up sponsoring our resolve could have connected it with the local environmental group he's on the board of, and they could have taken over the campaign. Or when asked for their support, our local Indivisible chapter could have ran with the campaign as their own. And this is something that I've seen before. A great idea happens from a young person, but they just don't have the power in the community to make it happen. And so it's taken by an adult-led group, and it has varying levels of success with how that turns out. But the adults of Bar Harbor gave our high school students and College of the Atlantic students nothing but support. On the eve of the town council meeting where our resolution was being debated, I have a clear memory of 5 high school students huddled with a few College of the Atlantic students and adult allies who knew a lot about the issue, huddling and having kind of their final pep talk. And for many of the students, it was their first time public speaking, and they were nervous, and it was so beautiful to see the exchange of knowledge and just the pumping up that was happening from some of the older folks in the huddle to these young high school students who really didn't know the power that they had. And they ended up completely knocking it out of the park, and the resolution passed, and it was all amazing. And from there, it was so clear how giving those students the power to change their town, and not giving them the power, but uplifting them and empowering them to create change in their community. It was so clear that win inspired more action. When I talked to the students that presented that night now, one of the students ended up interning that summer with a Climate to Thrive, which is a local environmental group. And another is studying environmental studies at Maine. Another student is leading a project now at the high school to bring solar to high schools all over the state. And another one is working hard also at Maine to get the whole Maine system to divest from fossil fuels. And they're barely out of high school, but they're already changing the world. And so the point is that there's no way of knowing what empowering a young person will lead to. And empowering youth takes courage from those with power. It takes letting go of control of a project, or taking extra time to make sure that youth have the resources they need, and also listening to what those needs are, and not what you assume them to be. Youth really know what is needed in the climate crisis. That's part of why I love working with other young people, is that they see the climate crisis and they know how to solve it, and they're not in these deep trenches of systems and long-standing town relationships that make solving these issues so complicated. They see the solution, and they know that that's what needs to get done. And so I'll leave it there, but just thank you all so much for listening to me ramble about how much I love working with young folks and how much I think they have the power to change the world. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Bev. Oh, you're on mute, Bev.
Okay, think a little bit about what you'd like to find out more from Ania. I'm curious about how students could bring solar, how students could bring about solar power within the schools all over the state. I wonder about that. So I'd like to know more. The next speaker is going to be Ania, Anna Siegel. And Anna Siegel is from Wayne Fleet School in Portland. And she's a 9th grader. She's been active for a few years already. She's the lead youth organizer. She was the lead youth organizer of events for Climate Strikes, Collective Voice Affecting Change. And that is part of the Students for Climate Justice that Ania was mentioning before. She's actually on the syllabus in the Woman and Climate Change course at University of Maine, which I think is amazing in itself. And as I said, she's been active since the 7th grade. And she has some passionate stories to tell about how she got involved in doing the work that she's doing now. So
Awesome.
here's
Thank you.
Alice. Go.
Thank you, Beverly. So as Bev said, my name is Anna. I'm a climate activist and student at Wainfleet School in Portland, Maine. I'm the co-organizing director of Maine Strikes, a core member of the statewide coalition Maine Youth for Climate Justice, and a member of the Emergency Management Working Group on the Maine Climate Council. As is like pandemic life, everyone is in the house right now, so you may hear some background noise. I just wanted to let you know because we have dogs and things can get a little loud. So let me know if you need me to be louder. I never would be involved at the level that I am now if I hadn't looked through a telescope in 2017. I was in Belize and on a whim decided to go on an early morning bird walk. And at the time, I thought that getting up at 7 a.m. to look for toucans and motmots was early, and I had no idea that going to look for owls at 2 a.m. would soon become routine. So in Belize, seeing me as the only kid in this birding group, the guide cleared away everyone else and invited me to step up to the strange black contraption that was his telescope. Through the lens was an extremely rare falcon. Nesting on a cliff, it flew away 30 seconds later, and I was the only one who got to see it. I often think about how my life might be different if that guide didn't let me look first before the falcon winged away. I wouldn't have become a birder, and in turn, I wouldn't have become a climate activist. The path from bird enthusiast to birder to now an activist who has no time to bird may not seem obvious, but Dr. John Hagan of the Maine Climate Table in a 2019 interview put the thought process better than I ever have. What good would Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve network sites be in the year 2100 if half of them were underwater? What good is the Arctic if it's no longer suitable habitat for breeding shorebirds? I realized that while conservation is incredibly important, the climate crisis affects biodiversity immensely, but also affects people, a stakeholder that I had never before considered, as I was only thinking about wildlife. These kinds of connections are where climate education in schools often falls flat. I learned in school that the greenhouse effect was harming polar bears, that the greenhouse effect was largely natural, and lines were never drawn in these lessons between the rise of emissions and things like equity, class, race, discrimination, indigenous sovereignty, and colonialism. That's why it took me so long from being a birder to become a full activist, because I had to make those connections myself. Now I do climate emergency, legislative, civics, and educational work. As Ania mentioned, I used to run the climate strikes in Maine before gatherings over 100 people were banned last March, before our big Earth Day strikes. So I went from high adrenaline, leading thousands of people in chants, demanding that cities take action, organizing media. Portland City Hall became my second home. I would go there all the time to strike, to sitting at my desk every day, sending emails and being on Zoom calls like everyone else. So it's definitely a shift in tone. But I have been advising climate emergency campaigns across the state, including in Belfast, with other amazing activists like Ania and Sarohi Kumar in Bar Harbor, and Wells Mundell Wood in Bangor. Actually, the Bar Harbor kids were the first to do climate emergency in Maine. They had been working on it before the Portland Declaration was passed, which I worked on, which passed first, but they had been working earlier. I remember when I first thought about climate emergency, I thought I was the first one to ever think of it. I thought I was so smart. I reached out to the Bar Harbor group. I was like, hey, let's do climate emergency together. Like, this would be great. And they were like, actually, we kind of got it all under control. We've been doing this for a few months. I was like, oh, okay. That sounds great. Thanks. So it was really cool to learn that it wasn't just like this new idea I came up with. It's an international movement. A climate emergency declaration is where a municipality commits to being 100% renewable by 2030. This commitment can be a little different depending on the declaration, but whole countries have declared, whole cities, not a state has declared yet. But that's the kind of work I was doing through strikes, because all of our climate strikes were what we call intentional activism. We never gathered people in a space to make noise for no reason. Our goal was always to have a demand. Every strike was centered around something, such as passing a climate emergency or passing legislation. An example of legislative work that I'm engaged in is attempting to pass LD 99, a bill whose primary sponsor is Representative Maggie O'Neill of Saco, and would divest the state of Maine from the hundreds of millions of dollars we have invested in fossil fuels. We have invested in fossil fuels through the Maine Public Employees Retirement System, Maine PERS, and divestment has become one of my passions, along with climate emergency work and striking. And it's definitely financial policy is something else we should be learning in school. It's been another barrier for this work because it's hard for me to talk about divestment. I don't quite understand how investments work, how taxes work, how this whole system is set up. So I've had to learn on the go. And it's definitely hard to rally people behind something that is confusing. That's why gathering support for this bill has been difficult. But it's another example of how education can be empowering. And as I've learned about this, I've learned how to write testimony for this bill, how to invite other people to do so, and hopefully get it passed. It is in committee now. Another youth activist, Andrew Blunt, is the main driver behind LD 437, which would incorporate a voluntary program for farmers across Maine to enrich their lands with healthy soil. So climate emergency campaigns are grassroots, engaging, and then they have the task of facing the bureaucratic wall of a town or city council. Legislative campaigns are high stakes and often involve games of political chess and coalition building before the bill also slams into the bureaucratic wall of the Maine legislature. Those walls are where the frustration creeps in and perseverance is needed. It can be frustrating for youth activists. We're thinking years in the future, we're thinking so boldly, and we're presenting this legislation, these bills, these resolutions to governmental bodies that aren't ready to think beyond where their money is right now or where the economy is at this point in time. And they can't think 4 years in the future, 10 years in the future, generations ahead, as youth are. And that's why the youth voice is so important. However, there is no pressure for any young activist to immediately jump into any intensive effort like a legislative campaign or a climate emergency campaign. While anyone can work on those things, because climate emergency has been worked on from anyone like the middle schoolers who passed their declaration in Saco, or the adult allies who are currently working on theirs in Lewiston, anyone can do it, but it's not a starting place for everyone. And while anyone can submit testimony in support of or against bills without getting further involved, legislation may not just be interesting for everyone. It wasn't for me at first. This is why my advice for student groups or any youth is to follow your passions. If your passion is birds, like mine, that's unlikely though, I don't know a lot of kids who like birds, this is just an example, you might contact Maine Audubon and see how your group can advocate for land to be conserved in your community. And that project may lead you into wider efforts such as climate emergency and legislation. And you might learn about the climate crisis and make that connection from birds to the climate crisis, similar to how my process went. By following passions, this keeps everyone involved engaged as there's motivation behind the work. A successful campaign is characterized by the energy fueling it. And absolutely nothing, no project or passion is petty or small. You might think that putting solar on your school is minuscule compared to some statewide effort, but everything matters if that's what you're passionate about. There may be people doubting you in the comments of the article you publish, or people who testify against your resolution, But at the same time, there will also be teachers who take your lesson plan and incorporate it into the school science curriculum, or parents who bring their kids to your webinars, and the people who like, share, and follow your posts in social media platforms. In short, my tidbits of wisdom, though I'm not sure that a teenager can dole out wisdom, I don't think I'm qualified to do that yet, is to use passion as a tool and remember that there are allies everywhere. I'm in 9th grade now, and the future is laid out in front of me with sparkling sands of opportunity. The climate crisis is a tidal wave that could wash it all away, not only for me, but everyone. Not only washing away my future hopes and dreams, but the basic necessities that people need to live. I come to climate activism from a point of privilege. And the deathly cold that has gripped Texas is a brutal reminder that I'm fighting for more than the next generations or to preserve biodiversity. I'm fighting for people to have access to drinkable water, breathable air, and a stable planet. Because I have that. But not everyone does, and not everyone will as the climate crisis worsens. Bev, just a quick time check. I realized I've gone on for a bit, and I had some things to say about the Texas situation, but I can also stop here.
I think you're in good shape.
So do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, a couple more minutes would be fine.
Okay, awesome. So the reason that I wanted to do that time check is just because I had a bit of a rant about the Texas situation, because it's a little frustrating for me that it's a reminder of how the media, both social media and traditional media like newspapers, distorts climate inequities and discrimination. A common refrain I've been seeing online and in the news is that Texas deserves this, somehow because they voted Republican and have been resistant to climate action measures. That's frankly ridiculous. There's no otherworldly karma at play here. No one deserves being frozen. And the ones who are suffering the most in the freeze are the ones whose vote is suppressed, whose voices are silenced, and who lack the resources to move to safer places because they are underserved. They did not choose for their state to have voted Republican, so therefore they don't deserve having a climate disaster thrust upon them. 2 days ago, an 11-year-old boy died from hypothermia in his mobile home. Fox News reported this tragedy at the same time that they were blaming the mass power outage on the wind turbines that Texas doesn't even have. Texas is 80% fossil fuels, no renewable energy, very little. So I hope that climate scientists and equity professionals analyze what happened in Texas in hindsight, as along with the inadequate disaster response for marginalized communities, there's also an element of governmental inaction involved. The Washington Post reported that Texan state leaders and officials from surrounding states had been warned in advance about the severity of the storm, but they didn't take the necessary or sufficient steps to help their constituents. That's sickening and can be viewed in a similar light as what's happening on a national and international scale. Our administration and world leaders remain tied to their corporate money and easy lifestyle, while scientists and activists are screaming at them to do something right now. So it's almost like a case study. If we don't act, the whole world will become Texas, or what's happening there right now. Urgent, bold, and ambitious are the 3 adjectives that must be used to describe climate policy that is passed anywhere. And those are 3 words that youth use often. I want urgent, bold, and ambitious climate policy. Thank you for listening. And at the end, once Jonah has gone, I would love to answer any questions you might have. This could be about me personally, such as, was I ever scared of public speaking or school? It could be about activism or politics, or even about birds. I think in these kinds of spaces, people get scared to ask personal questions, but I think asking the same sort of questions about like what inspired you doesn't really help people learn and connect. So feel free to ask anything that's on your mind in that question portion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. I believe for a long time that thinking globally starts with acting locally. And Anna, you and Ania have been wonderful examples of that, especially on the global perspective, and gives a lot of us a ton of hope. like to introduce somebody who's going to be speaking about the local action that he is working on doing here at Belfast Area High School. He is an 11th grade student, Jonah Lovejoy. He has been working on starting a climate crisis team at his school, and he is also the youngest member of our climate crisis committee. He comes to our meetings every other Wednesday morning. They go on for a long time. He takes notes, he asks questions, he doesn't look away, and he's awesome. Very proud to introduce Jonah Lovejoy.
Thank you, Beverly. Can everyone hear me all right? Sorry, I had a little audio malfunction earlier, but anyways, yeah, my name is Jonah Lovejoy, and I'm a current member at the Belfast Area High School Climate Crises team. And so my journey is a little bit shorter than Anya's and Anna's, just because previously climate activism hasn't really been a major point in my life so far, and it hasn't really been something that I've paid much attention to, and I've been involved in more of like a passive way. And so it really wasn't until recently where I really began to get involved with climate action. And so at the beginning of this year, in two of my classes, which were like environmental science and projects and engineering, we actually began working with the Belfast Climate Crises Committee on sort of like a sea rise project. And so our job was really to set up these stations around Belfast where people could easily access them and take photos and upload them so that they could observe and contribute data towards monitoring sea rise. And then in our other class, project engineering, we were asked to construct an Arduino device that would be able to transmit the actual varying sea levels back to us so that our class could then evaluate them. And then so this is really what sparked my interest in climate action, just realizing that I could like go out and perform climate activism in my own community, and like it wasn't really that hard at all. And so I began joining the Belfast Climate Crises Committee, as Beverly said, for the bi-weekly meetings, and then later becoming a full member. And then so one of the goals that was talked about really on the meetings was how I, as a student, could get other students to become more involved. And so I kind of looked at our own school, and I really wanted to help revitalize the club at our school, which had since dissipated with senior members leaving and the effects of COVID. And then so like this year especially has had its ups and unfortunately many downs. So creating like a solid group with like clear plans has definitely been a really big challenge. And so communication has really been a big one, as like our school currently is broken up into different cohorts, so I can't really see all my peers on a regular basis. But I'm confidently able to say that the high school group at Belfast Area High School has managed to form a pretty small team, but we have a really bright future, I think. And so currently we are composed of around 6 members, and we meet each week over Zoom, and some are in the classroom. And then so with the help of the Belfast Climate Crises Committee members, like specifically Beverly, Roxby, and Hank Reisner have zoomed in, as well as some of the other members. And our advisor, Dave Thomas, we've been able to really reach out to other schools and other helpful activists such as Ania Wright and Anna Siegel for more information as well as some guidance. And then so at the moment, our group is focusing more on how we can make our school more climate friendly, I guess, like on a more local level. And our first project has been targeting like the composting recycling program at our school and figuring out how we can really make them more sustainable. And we were really hoping to connect with like the Troy Howard Middle School, which is in Belfast, and because they have a really strong composting system already, and they really have this set in place so that they can sustainably manage their large garden. But at the high school, we don't really have that big of a garden, so we have thought more about donating our compost to the middle school or possibly to an organization such as like the Jackson Regenerational Farm, which would gladly come by and pick up our compost for us. And then another benefit of establishing a composting program at our high school would be it would allow the middle schoolers to, when they transition to the high school, they can better apply these composting skills and gardening skills at the high school. So just make everything more smoothly as they make their way up to the high school. And then the other aspect of our first project has been focusing on the recycling program at our school. So at the moment, since like COVID has hit, the recycling program.
Jonah, we lost you.
A goal of our group has really been trying to join the Maine Students for Climate Justice. And as some of you might already know, this is like a coalition of high schools throughout the state. And we really hope this will open our connections a little bit and allow us to collaborate with other high schoolers more efficiently and see like what they've done and how we can work that into our own agendas and stuff. And then like as we begin to grow and more of our opportunities are more available, we hope to have like multiple projects going on at once so that we can like divide our interests and
Jonah, you are frozen. Let's see. I think
I haven't really been involved that much with climate action, and this is pretty much like my first big thing, I guess. And really, really great opportunity to introduce myself as well as the Belfast area high school climate crisis team to the community and really show our ambitions for how we as a group want to fight climate change. And so just thank you guys all. And I would also like to say special thanks to Ania and Anna Siegel, who have previously met with our club and have really been like a very good guiding figure for us. And so I think that's all I have to say. So feel free to ask me any questions on what I've been doing at Belfast. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonah. Okay, that's it for the formal part of our program. And I'd like to know if people have any questions. You know how to raise your hand. You go to the participants list and see your name, and you can click raise hand. And when I see the hand is up, I will call on you. I see first hand raised. Adam Siemens has a question.
Hi, thank you so much for your talks. They were amazing. It's extremely inspirational for me. I'm actually tuning in from Bolivia, South America, but on my way to moving to Maine shortly. So it's awesome to see everything that's going on. Ania specifically, and maybe Anna as well. I know that you have been through the Maine Climate Change Council planning a lot of educational activities throughout the state as part of the 4-year plan. And I was curious whether you have any intention of using, we had talked a little bit about this before, Ania, the idea of using youth to educate the legislature about climate change in any way. Are there any plans like that at all? And if not, what other type of ways might you help youth incorporate themselves into the legislative process? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll take a first swing at it, and then Anna or Jonah, if you want to add anything, go for it. But I think there's currently an initiative to get a youth commission as a commission to the state legislature, which would give youth a stronger voice at the state house when it comes to decisions that are being made to affect their future. And I think, in general, youth in Maine are waking up to the fact that they have power and they have a voice. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Adam, I think it's just you. I just got a message that he can't hear me.
Go.
So yeah, anyways, I think youth are really waking up to the fact that they have a voice in this state. And even, you know, I graduated high school in 2015, which, you know, feels like quite a long time ago, but already I'm just seeing a huge difference between the amount that folks are engaged now in the high school level than they were when I was in high school. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Anna or Jonah if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so I'd just like to add that there are a lot of groups doing civic work that are affiliated with Maine Youth for Climate Justice. So part of the reason why climate's hard to tackle is that it's so intersectional, as I mentioned earlier, with literally everything. And one of the things it's intersectional with is civics. We need to have a fair democracy and a fair legislature to pass climate policy. And so there are groups like League of Women Voters has a youth council, and I was on the Speaker's Bureau of the Youth Council during the during the electoral season. And so they're doing civics work. A group called Just Maine for Just Us is doing civics work. So they're all teaching youth how the legislature works. Another project that I've been working on loosely is a 6-week youth in politics program to basically teach older youth who are eligible, such as 19, to run for office. And it would be completely virtual. This is a personal project that I'm very passionate about, but it's kind of taking the back burner because of all the bills and all the other things I've been working on. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. So yeah, and I also wanted to flag that if people are interested, I do have a direct action item that people can take right now if you're feeling inspired by all of us talking. I know no one asked that question, but is anyone, would that be a good thing to throw out there? Okay. So the Bangor City Council is voting on a climate emergency resolution tonight at 7:30. I cannot attend because I'm helping on another call after this, but you do not have to live in Bangor to tell them that you support. Anyone can do it. It's actually good if you're not in Bangor because it shows that there's statewide solidarity for these kinds of things. I'll put the links in the chat, but you can either attend the meeting at 7:30 and say, like, you know, I support the climate emergency resolution. You don't have to say anything more than that if you don't want to. Just I support the climate emergency resolution. And if you can't attend, you can email the Bangor City Council. I'll put the link in the chat and just email them saying I support the resolution led by youth. If you want to say more, I'll also put a link for a template to like write out like a full length testimony if you want to put some more out there. So sorry to totally divert from the question, but I just thought that'd be really good, like rapid response.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. Try to talk fast here. Cynthia has a question that she has put in the chat. Hi, I'm not from Belfast, so I don't think I should talk. At the same time, I'm dying to know if there are any youth from the Farmington area involved in Maine Youth for Climate Justice. Farmington. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that question. Not that I'm aware of, but UMaine does have UMaine Farmington there, and we do have some UMaine students involved. So yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. We do have over 350 students and youth in our coalition. So, and because we're organizing virtually right now, it's hard to keep track of where everyone's from. But yeah, if you know any youth, feel free to connect them to us.
Right. Well, I was going to say, it sounds like you're the one that you're dying to know about. And that being said, we have there are some links that are going to be in the chat about how to contact people for the Maine Youth for Climate Justice. So you could be helpful that way. Get something started. Does anybody have any other questions? Really?
Yeah, so
okay. Gosh.
Joe's waving his hand.
Huh?
Joe is waving his hand.
Oh, okay.
Unmute yourself. You're muted, Joe. Very
All right,
good.
can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, panel, first of all. I have a kind of an updated question. I want to know the panel's thoughts on the proposed natural gas pipeline that they're proposing to go through Belfast, Camden, and all the way to Rockland. Does the student panel have any thoughts on that proposed natural gas pipeline?
I am very glad that you asked that question. Yes, we do. Natural gas is a fossil fuel, and it is not a climate solution. I will link in the chat to a 2-pager about natural gas and the pipeline. But yeah, I know it's a contentious subject, but Summit Natural Gas is doing all it can to make it seem like a sweet deal to go over to natural gas. And really, in the long term, it is a bad investment, not only for you, but also for our future. And there are, rebates and other things available to retrofit your home and install things like heat pumps that in the long term will save you a lot more money than switching to natural gas, even though they're trying to sweeten the deal with some rebates. So yeah, I'll link to a 2-pager about that, and happy to talk more about it. Also tomorrow night, if you're interested in another action, I'll take the cue from Anna to plug another event, but the Rockland City Council is having a special meeting about the pipeline. And we're trying to rally support and get as many people there as possible to oppose it. And I'll put the link in the chat for that as well. But same deal as Bangor. It's really just about getting people in the room, showing them that people from Belfast to Rockland do not want this project. So yeah, and Anna and Jonah, not sure if you want to add anything else about natural gas, but.
Yeah, the only reason why it looked like I was laughing earlier is because my inbox has just been flooded with like everyone's talking about this pipeline right now. So I was like waiting for the question to come up. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say. It's bad. We shouldn't do it. We need to oppose it. And if you're still confused on like, wait, I thought natural gas was renewable, like that's totally okay. Lots of people think that. We're told that by fossil fuel companies, so we're greenwashed into these ideas. It's called clean, it's called green. You see those buses that run on natural gas it says like buses run on clean energy. So there's nothing wrong with being confused about that. And I know lots of people are pretty much tricked into signing these contracts. So I just want to throw that out there because it's because there's no shame in learning.
Thank you both. Important topic for sure.
Can I get a follow-up?
Oh, go,
Can I
Joe.
get a little follow-up? But yeah, just a follow-up for you guys. Thank you for that. Is it true? Because I'm not sure if it is true, but I had read that half of the $3,300 rebate offered to homes is actually coming from Maine efficiency, which would be taxpayer money. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's a little bit complicated. So Efficiency Maine offers rebates for weatherizing your home, which is great. And then Summit Natural Gas will, if you get a rebate from Efficiency Maine, offers to match that rebate to install natural gas. So Efficiency Maine isn't actually, none of Efficiency Maine's money is going towards the natural gas pipeline. But Summit kind of hops on to their rebates to say, if you get this from Efficiency Maine, we'll give you more money. So it looks like a great deal, and it looks like you're doing a lot to make your home more efficient and better for the environment. And yeah, it's a little confusing, but yeah. So if you get $3,000 from Efficiency Maine to install better windows and get a heat pump, you can also apply to get money from Summit Natural Gas.
Any other questions? I'd like to put in a plug for Governor Mills Climate Council and the recommendations that they made for the state. I think that makes interesting reading. It's a very long document, but you can go on the state website and find it pretty easily and give you some ideas about things that you can contribute to, either through Climate Action Team or supporting students who are putting together their own working groups to address these issues. But it's a nice thing to look at, and it gives us a little bit of hope that if these things are carried through, then much more can come as well. So yeah, go to the governor's Climate Council website. Okay, it's 5 minutes to 7.
I thought Cynthia had her hand raised again.
Oh, really? I didn't see a hand. Oh, okay, there you are.
Yeah. If you have 5 more minutes, if I could just quickly make a plug for something I'm involved in, and it's called Carbon Cashback for Maine. And it has to do with a carbon fee and dividend approach to carbon pricing. And that's at the national level. And what we're doing is organizing towns all around the state to pass articles on their town meeting warrant supporting the notion of this carbon fee and dividend, which is extremely, a well-recognized, very effective and efficient way to reduce carbon emissions on a national economic level. And also an equitable one, because there's a dividend that is supplied to all American households from the fees that are collected on carbon fuels, carbon emissions generating fuels. And so anyway, there are these campaigns are going on in like a lot of, like dozens of towns. And if you know of any youth who might be at all interested in speaking on behalf of this or showing support or helping a campaign, you can go to Carbon Cashback for Maine. That is Carbon Cashback #4 me.org, and see what towns on the homepage. There's a map of what towns have campaigns, and so we'd welcome your participation. We're really looking for youth to jump on board, but you guys are so busy doing good things. So thanks.
Thank you. We can put that in the chat. Is it Carbon Cashback for MAINE or ME?
No, ME actually. So I can put that in there.
Okay, maybe you could put that in the chat and then we'll have
Yeah.
that saved. Thank you. I see another question from Mila.
Hi there. Let's see if I can get this working. Hi. I just wanted to thank you for inviting the Watershed School to join this conversation tonight. We've got a few students who've joined, and I'm the new director of the Climate Action and Leadership Lab at the school. It's been a little tricky to start to get to know the regional players given COVID, but we're off to a good start. And I just wanted to let you all know that if you have ideas, if you think that there are things that Watershed students could contribute to, we'd be happy to do that. There's been a long tradition of Watershed working with the town of Camden to advance climate issues and encouraging the town to join the Global Covenant on climate change and work on issues around sea level and around increasing efficiency in the town. They've just had a tremendous amount of success and formed a pretty good partnership with a lot of local officials and groups. So I'm really excited to be coming on board and taking the reins for that program and seeing how it grows in the future. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'll try to see if I can put my email in the comments here, and because I think our students would be interested in learning more about some of the things that were talked about tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. I'm sure we would all like to see that. Thanks a lot. Welcome. Do you see any more questions, Beth, or comments?
Not at this time.
No? All right. Well, the Bangor City Council meeting begins at 7:30, everybody. And I think we have our marching orders. All right, the night is still young and there's lots to do, but I'm sure that you've been, hopefully you've been inspired by what you've heard tonight, and hopefully you're on board to do your part, which I think you must be. So, yeah, thanks for joining. And
Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Anya. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Jonah. You all were awesome. Really appreciate your help tonight.
I'm gonna just leave the meeting open a minute so people can go through the chat till everybody
okay.
logs off.
Good idea.
But if you're done, you can go. But I just wanted to leave the chat open for a minute or two for people to look at the email addresses and links.